back. It's the last leg of the conversation for today, and just call it the state of the nation. But one of the things we want to start with is that particular Samoa agreement that has been causing controversy. So just as a background, Nigeria signed up to this agreement called the Samoa Agreement that involves the EU and Africa, Pacific, and other organizations in that particular agreement. So this is what the controversial does. If you guys can hold it there for me. So EU, European Union, and Africa, Caribbean, Pacific states signed an agreement. And some people raise flags on some of the provisions of that particular agreement. It's called the Samoa Agreement. So that Article 2.5, the party shall systematically promote a gender perspective and ensure that gender equality is mainstream across all policies. A lot of people are not comfortable with that. The argument here is the fact that there's a suspicion that this is an implicit or indirect way to introduce LGBTQ into Nigeria, which our laws are against. I mean, the Same-Sex Prohibition Act 2014 or 2013 is clearly against. So you can see that second provision. The party shall support universal access to sexual and reproductive health commodities and healthcare services, including for family planning, information and education, and the integration of reproductive health into a national strategies and program. If we can go to the next article, which is Article 36.2, the parties commit to the full and effective implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action and the Program of Action of the International Conference on Population and Development and the outcomes of their review conference, and commit to sexual and reproductive health and rights in that context. So these clauses are what the agitators are saying you have to take it out, else Nigeria should unsign this agreement. And there are even constitutional issues as to the issue of duality of concepts when it comes to domesticating this kind of law and all of that. So it's a gamut of issues. Bagos Dachong is a former lawmaker. He joins us from Abuja studio to weigh in on this as well as other issues, as well as my guest right in Lagos, Inibe Effiong, a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Let me start with Mr. Dachong. I don't know whether you're privy to this agreement, but maybe your quick take. Nigerian law is very clear. I think Section 1 or Section 2 also of that law clearly states that it is same-sex is prohibited in Nigeria. And Section 5 talks about the penalty for same-sex marriage up to 14 years and define the issue of what marriage is in Section 7 of the Same-Sex Act, clearly stating man and woman. And so clearly by culture, by convention, we are not in the business of the LGBTQ, clearly. But people are saying these clauses are suspect and it should be expunged. I want your take on this.
Yeah. Well, Geoffrey, you have said it. You have said it all in that perspective that anything we do as a people in this country, we are being guided by the law. And if National Assembly have already put the law in place against any unforeseen circumstances like this, we will still be bound by the law, unless we now see that as an amendment is being passed to the National Assembly as an executive bill or any citizen bill to amend the Same-Sex Prohibition Act of 2014, that is where we'll be able to raise much alarm. But with what the Samoa Agreement have said, we can define it in whatsoever terms as Nigerians who want to define it according to our own law. But still, the red flag is necessary. But again, the end game is if we now see that there is an amendment that is being taken to the National Assembly, and which is another angle that the executive, the federal government needs to weigh in more sensitization to sensitize Nigerians on aspects why it has to sign the Samoa law, which it has to, because I know that, okay, it has to do with climate change, it has to do with protection, governance of the ocean, and so on and so forth, and most especially the funding that government will get from it. And again, this is the issue. These are issues that you get from when we are so focused on getting funding instead of us looking inward on how we'll be able to be self-sustained. And so these are issues that we'll be able. These are issues that we'll face anytime we have to sign 1 or 2 agreements because of funding. But clearly, we already have something that what is guiding us as people, which is the law. The law is the law. There's nothing like that. It's invalid in Nigeria. Even if someone is coming from out of the country to practice it in Nigeria, is invalid, not only for Nigerians, but same-sex marriage or any of those is invalid in Nigeria, and we're going to stand by the law. But like I said, the red flag, we need to have more explanation by government.
All right, let me come to you, Mr. Enibe. The federal government has come out to say it has nothing to do with LGBTQ. It's about developmental issues. But people, we had a gentleman, I think Sonny is his name, who has been in some of these rooms, say when those languages are used, they are suspect. And for him, it has to be expunged. Should we take the explanation of the federal government enough, or what's your take on this particular issue?
For me, I think the starting point is to say that by virtue of Section 12 of our Constitution, the 1999 Constitution as amended, no treaty between Nigeria or the Federation and any other country shall have the force of law, except to the extent to which such treaty has been enacted into law by an act of the National Assembly. In other words, why it is an international principle or principle of international law called Pacta Sunt Servanda, that parties are bound by international agreements. And Nigeria has, maybe in some sense, an assumed responsible member of the international community, is expected to comply with treaties, international conventions and agreements and so on. To the extent that those agreements have purposive effect or are intended to have cohesive effect on Nigeria, in other words, that those agreements are expected to be enforceable, they must be enacted into law by a National Assembly. Now, regarding the Samoa agreement, what the federal government has come out to say, in a rather, dismissive tone, that look, this has nothing to do with LGBTQ. I beg to differ to an extent. If you look at Article 15 of that Samoa agreement, there is a very interesting language there. Look at Article 15. And it prohibits discrimination or violence based on gender, based on political orientation, based on sex. But interestingly, it also says sexual orientation. And what is sexual orientation? Sexual orientation includes and emphasizes LGBTQ. So I don't think the federal government, I think it amounts to intellectual duplicity, with profound respect, to say that the Samoa agreement does not have anything to do with LGBTQ. The argument that should be had is, having signed to this agreement, having become a state party to this agreement, can it supersede, can it override, can it take precedence over the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act? My understanding of the law is that the answer is unanimously in the negative. Namely that, because an act of the National Assembly has clearly prohibited same-sex marriages and same-sex relationships in certain ways, international conventions, international agreements cannot defeat that law. Now, for the federal government to even make it enforceable, right? Because I need to make this point clear. You can't enforce a law, a penal legislation, either through prosecution or by just being unwilling. That is what the Tinubu administration can do, is that they can off record, for example, tell the police, we don't want you to arrest members of the LGBT community. That will be consistent with the Samoa agreement. So they don't necessarily, because I heard the guests in Abuja say that they need to go to National Assembly to amend the act. Every person who understands how governance works knows that matters of law enforcement are executive responsibilities. So if the president, for example, has a conversation with the Inspector General of Police and says that, look, in view of the Samoa agreement, in view of the benefits Nigeria and this government stands to gain, I do not want to see LGBT community people being arrested. That will be promotive of that agreement. But I must say, but to the extent that we have a subsisting law known as the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, the Samoa agreement does not grant any immunity to members of the LGBTQ. But the conversation that we must further have, because I have seen this thing in Africa, where African, leaders seems to make the LGBT argument more or less about politics and so on. So I just needed to make that point, that on the basis of law, the Samoa agreement cannot take precedence over Nigerian constitution.
All right, Mr. Dachong, let me come back to you. So for you, if this is this controversial, and even the document recognizes that that European countries themselves are divided over some of these issues, shouldn't we just ask them to expunge it and be clear as far as the status of LGBTQ is concerned? Because we know where we stand. We're not confused as a country.
Oversee of such clauses, for me, it's supposed to have been an issue that could have been discussed by the parties before signing the agreement. Because further controversy is that, yes, in as much as it has not defined or it has not clearly and explicitly said this is what gender equality is talking about in the agreement, or this is what and what, for the fear of the culture we are in, and even with the law we already have as a people, it could have been further discussed and for it to be expunged, or either way, or for further consultation. But mine, and as a lawmaker, I will stand with my guard that, look, there's already a law, and there is no piece of agreement that can supersede the law, the constitution, or an act that has been passed by the National Assembly and signed into law by the president. It is not possible. The president cannot even give an order against the law that don't do this or that. The law is the law. Whatsoever, the president is guided by the law, so whatsoever directive that the president will give will be according to the law. So to some of us lawmakers, we are still guided and bound by that, unless, like I said earlier, an amendment is being said. But again, further consultation, further discussion, further academic exercise to explain those clauses on what gender equality means. Is it gender equality between a male and female? Is it gender equality between male and male, or female and female? So that is the fear of Nigerians, and which I believe that the government should come out to do further explanation and consultation, to be transparent, to understand these issues. Because I believe that the EU and AU, they should be able to understand the contextualization, and every country has its own culture, and whatsoever right that you want to be obeyed, it should be, first of all, start with the culture and the customary law of such countries.
All right, Mr. Dachong, within the time we have, I understand we have just a few more minutes. I wish we had maybe 10 more minutes, but we don't have that. So let's hit this as much as possible. Let's come to the issue of the economy. The president, a few days ago, inaugurated the Economic Council, not NEC this time, but made up of government officials as well as people in the private sector, some of the top guns in business. We expect an injection of about 2 trillion into the economy in different sectors. The question I have for you, you have been a lawmaker, you have done oversight in some of these things. How far-reaching can this be, given where we are as a country?
Geoffrey, for me, from experience, looking at government in, government out, the same thing is being done. The same people have been recycled as economic team, the same kind of guidelines and so on and so forth. I expect that government could have gone further to do more than what we are seeing, because every government has either have economic advisory team or economic, but you see the same set of people year in, year out, and we are having the same problem. So why can't we now start having new faces that will come into the economic team, look at this? Where are those technocrats that we believe can be able to look at these issues across party lines? What has happened to young Nigerians that we have seen that have been trained all around? And unfortunately, most of them are leaving this country. So where are the policies? Because for me, year in, year out, we have seen Nigeria borrowing policies that we try for quick fix. At the end of the day, it doesn't work. Another administration comes in and it abolishes it, start looking for another policy to come in. We need to look at these issues. But for me, what I have seen so far on ground, I don't so much believe that it will have much impact.
All right, Ms. Anibe, your take on this particular issue as we wrap up.
I think it would be delusional, with profound respect, to expect that Alhaji Aliko Dangote and others will change the Nigerian economy. These individuals who have made money for themselves, they are lifetime economic advisors to every government in power. It is just window dressing. Dangote is not going to solve our economic problem. If a man who is driven by profit, so he's not going to devise policies that will promote the Nigerian economy and against his own interests. But let us be serious. This president does not understand the reality, the urgency of now. You cannot be speaking about changing the economy and you are still dissipating public funds on things that do not matter. This is a president that we were told had expertise in gathering technocrats. Where are the Tinubu technocrats? They are nowhere to be found. One year after, this president has not come out.
All the people around him, Wale, Edu, Cardoso, all of these guys.
They are busy with things that matter to them, but clearly not the interests of the Nigerian people. Because we have not seen the policies. We have not seen the actions. What we see is the sustenance of the culture of West. You cannot say that in a country that inflation is abominable, electricity tariff has just been increased again, right? Price of fuel is going up. The cost of basic commodities is escalating. The government is not addressing that. They are wasting money building, edifice for the vice president, wasting money on the comfort of the president, trying to buy a new aircraft for the president in an economy that has almost collapsed. These people are not serious, and they should admit it. They are taking Nigerians for granted, and time is running out. Look at what is happening in Kenya. Why are they so insensitive? They are not reading the handwriting on the wall. That the Nigerian people are being pushed too far. You have today the Kenyan president speaking on X, addressing over 120,000 people. I listened to it directly.
Right.
In 1 year, Tinubu has not spoken to Nigerians. So how can you understand what we are going through? It is impossible. Okay,
that's a lot in quick succession. I must thank you both for coming on the program. Mr. Dachong Bagos, former member of the House of Representatives, definitely we need to have this conversation again, as well as Mr. Anibe Effiong, legal practitioner.
We have, Geoffrey, we have a lot to talk about the economy of this country.
We have a lot
and because it's no longer about party, it's about governance, so all of us need to come to the table to see that either administration in power succeeds. So that's my concern, because a lot of Nigerians are suffering. So we need to proffer a solution.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the program. I must appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Well.